Hello students, today we're going to make a background design from scratch using a single brush. The first thing that we want to do is we want to create a new file. So we'll go to File and New. We want to change our increments to inches, 8.5 by 11, 300 resolution, and CMYK color. I've already done that in the interest of time here. The next thing that we want to do is we want to select our brush tool. Once we do that, we can either click on this little folder here, or we can click on this little palette over here and it gives us the same menu with these little brush presets. Okay, so I'm going to click on where it says Brush Tip Shape. The first thing that we want to do is we want to go over here and add some brushes. So next to the actual brush tool, there's a little arrow down. We go over and I want to choose the dry media brushes. I'm going to click Append, and what that means is it's going to add the brushes in addition to the regular brushes that are already there. Now I click on a separate down arrow button here where the number 13 is, that's the size, and I scroll all the way down through my dry media brushes and I'm going to choose the leaf. From here I can choose a different size. I'm going to make it actually rather large. And down here I'm going to choose a couple different fall colors. First one for my foreground, I'm going to choose like an orange color, and then for my background this will make a difference in some of the other things here in just a moment. But I'm going to uncheck all these boxes so that I can show you what some of them do a step at a time. First thing is, if you're clicked on the actual, up at the top, brush tip shape, you can change the spacing. Right now when I draw with this brush, it just kind of scatters one leaf on top of the other. If I want to see them a little bit more spread out, I go ahead and kind of dance around and put different things on there. Okay. The next thing I want to show you is I can change the angle, if you look down here, of how those appear, so the spacing as well as the angle of the brushes. I can also change the roundness of the brush. Right now it's 100%. For this particular brush it doesn't really matter, but you can play around with those if you see fit. Next, I'm going to click on Shape Dynamics. Notice that when you click on these, a whole different menu comes up on the side here. So with Shape Dynamics, notice now that all of these are in different colors, different directions, but they're also different sizes. So it changed the dynamic of how that all flows. When I click on Scattering, it now has kind of move them around, and you can control the jitter, which is kind of how strict it flows or how well it flows, and you can change the count of how many of these groupings show up. So when I draw those there, so we've gone from a straight kind of solitary line of one on top of the other to a whole different smattering there just with a few clicks with the same brush. Okay, now what's really neat is when we get to color dynamics, we can change the foreground and background jitter so that it uses both colors that are in my palette there and kind of mixes them together, which is pretty cool. So you can see the orange and the yellow. If I mess with this hue jitter, I can also, it will actually pick up other hues in between. Now I feel like that brush is pretty small still. I'm going to bring that up a little bit just to show you. Notice how the hue jitter is bringing out, again, kind of various colors in addition to the two that I've chosen. You can change the saturation, the brightness, all those different things as well. Now, what I really like is the transfer tool. This one randomizes the opacity, which means it changes how they kind of appear, okay, as far as how dark or how light they appear. So what I want to do is I want to make actually a new layer. I'm going to turn that off. I want to make this layer white. So that I can start over here a little bit. And let's go back to that to show you then when I clicked on the transfer. Again, I feel like I need to make this a little bit larger. There we go. Notice that because my colors are black and white, it's still randomizing the size in different colors. So I need to change back to my yellow and my background kind of orangish color. And here, when I do the transfer, it randomizes the opacity a little bit. So it kind of floats them in different directions because of all the other changes that I've made. It also floats them in at different transparencies. Now what's cool about the wet noise, or the noise tool, and the wet edges together is that we'll also kind of make it a little more transparent so that it's a little more, kind of like I said, that with all of these combinations, we have the scattering and the shape dynamics, everything's going in different directions. I'm changing the size, and it's also kind of randomizing the opacity between these. And adding that wet edges also kind of lightens up the image, especially if you want this to be a background for something to, pictures or other things to go on top of. You want to make sure that the, that these things aren't particularly dark in too many different spots. Now you're welcome to mess with some of the other, options here as well. These were the ones that I found to be most helpful, kind of bringing up and flowing through. And I thought just to add one more item to what you're doing is to add text. It's always good to remember how to place some text and how to put some text effects on. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a text box. Okay, I'm going to make that much larger. Typed in the word fall colors. Let's see if I spelled it correctly. Okay. Alright, I actually don't think that shows up quite as well as perhaps maybe if I sample one of these darker colors here. I'm going to do that. I actually want to change my font. So let's look for something maybe slightly bolder. There we go. Make that again just a little bit larger. So again, if you were making a background for something, for the news magazine, for a design that you were working on, to put pictures on, to kind of add almost like a scrapbooking background, anything for any reason, or even making your own background for your digital signage, this would be a great way to do that. Obviously the size would be a little bit different for signage, but here you can still add in your drop shadows. So I'm actually going to add in a black drop shadow here so I can change that color. I also want to kind of give it a little bit of a bevel and emboss look to it, to kind of make it pop. And I feel like that drop shadow is just a little too spread out, so I'm going to pull that back just a little bit so we can read that. And one more thing that you could add here on the layer with your effects is you could bring in an inner stroke. And if you change this to the inside, you can bring kind of like a little layer around the inside here, just to kind of frame what you're doing. And again, if you want to change the color, to possibly mimic something else that's out and around, you could do that as well to make things match up. So this is how you make a very simple background just using one brush. So after you copy this one, you should select a different brush of your own from any of those brush palettes, which are in here. There are a bunch of different kinds. There are pencil brushes, the dry media we used, the leaf one there, airbrushes, any of those there, to make your own kind of simple design using all these different techniques and creating a background. So once you copy this one, make one of your own, save them both, and good luck.